Tjena.
Yeah. Welcome to this interview. I'm Nisse Palm. Chain of Sounds is your platform for double bass, and today I have the great pleasure to meet Peter Axelsson, bass player, inventor, entrepreneur. You have many costumes, and for those of you who doesn't know about Peter, do you mind telling the audience about yourself?
I was fortunate to be accepted as a student of Red Mitchell, who lived in Stockholm from 65 to 93. And this was 1976. Meeting Red had many effects on my thinking about music. At one hand, he was very much into making the bass a solo instrument, for
Yes.
which he used different kind of microphones. First this shallow microphone with magnets, and then Agen Nylén's string vision later on.
The string with magnetic,
You
have to adjust each string with a magnet.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
And then he used pickups on the top of the bass. He used long Ibanez guitar pickups. But I remember those pickups because he was experimenting with placing them horizontally, vertically, or diagonal.
All right.
To the grain in the top, and he got different sound, and of course most of the sound came from the magnetic microphone, and he played rather loud.
Yeah.
but he was very interested in the technical, and I was influenced by that as well.
Yeah. So was your first idea about building your own microphone at that time already?
No, I built my first guitar microphone when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
of a crystal gramophone pickup cartridge.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised. Your interest for engineering has followed you through your career as a bass player, right?
The conditions for jazz musicians to record was very limited. You had to go into a studio and pay a lot of money, and those studios were full of expensive gear that we don't need.
Makes sense.
Okay,
yeah.
Getting into recording, I had the idea of minimizing the gear needed for recording in order to take advantage of time. Allow a group to be creative and make mistakes and come back the next day.
Without getting ruined.
Without getting ruined, and without being dependent of those subsidies that.
Yeah. So were you inspired from the 60s jazz recordings with like the 2-mic system and stuff?
The 2 microphone systems were more like 40s and 50s.
All right. Okay.
And in the 60s already there were multi-channel, or it's somewhere in the beginning of the 60s. With the rock era came the multi-channel.
Yeah. We all know that double bass is hard to amplify. It's a tricky instrument. So we are talking about acoustics. We're talking about the room, the placing, the leakage, and stuff like that. So When did you come up with the idea about the Axelsson bass microphone, the
Well,
Czech Israel signature?
yeah, that's fast forward. So getting into recording, I was inspired by Stig Karlsson, maker of the famous Karlsson speaker, and he also was my kind of mentor.
Oh, right, yeah.
When I started with recording, and that led to a recording of my first record, Natural Way,
Yeah.
which was recorded with 2 microphones and 2 vacuum tube mixers and a tape recorder.
All right,
And that album was, or CD was adopted by the Swedish Hi-Fi magazine and sold for 2 years, something like that.
yeah.
And from there, later on, I got in touch with Chuck Israels, one of my idols in bass, and wonderful bass player and meticulous about his sound and setup of the bass,
yes,
you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Through him, I got in touch with David Berger in New York, who had he was in teaching at Juilliard, and he had his big band.
Yeah.
Sultans of Swing was the name then, and then later David Berger Jazz Orchestra.
Yeah.
So and during this time, I came more and more into mastering. At one point, I was mastering a production for David, where the music was recorded in a studio that had some kind of leakage problem that they couldn't get around. They tried to baffle the bass as much as they could, but anyway, the whole band was as strong in the bass mic as it was in their own individual mics.
We're speaking leakage.
We are talking leakage.
Yes.
And anyway, I had to ask them for the individual bass tracks and clean them up as much as I could, and digitally bring out the bass and send them back to mixing.
Okay.
Just think if you could make a microphone that you didn't have to isolate from everything else.
No worries, bass microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some kind of Swiss Army
Yeah.
microphone.
Yeah.
So that was the threshold, you know, to have not competing with the Neumann A47s or anything, but to have a signal that you actually can use in a mix.
Yeah.
That was my idea, and that does not create a mono image in the middle of the sound picture.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that was the beginning of this idea. Later on, 2 years later, I played at a place where they had a disco, and the disco was going on all the time, and we were supposed to, you know, they just cut off the music and then we start playing.
Yeah.
And I had to tune my bass, and it was so loud. This disco music was so loud that you could actually feel the bass notes in your chest.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break anything? No. So anyway, I put my ear just close to the top of the bass and try to hear, and I found it so strong. I could hear the bass right next to the top, I could hear the bass louder than the disco music that was going on.
Yeah. Okay.
So I tuned my bass that way, and I thought that it must be possible to use that.
Okay. Yeah.
This very loud sound just a millimeter from the top. But then with directional microphones, you also have the proximity problem.
Yeah.
So if you put a microphone very close to the top, it sounds very boomy and undefined. So I had to deal with that to make a frequency curve that was more or less accurate right next to the instrument.
Yeah. So that's quite an advanced engineering to find out. I mean, did you study acoustics to figure out the relation between how close and how?
I didn't go to school, but
No.
I've been reading, and I've been fortunate to have great professionals to talk to.
Yeah, yeah. I bet Stig Carlson was a fantastic mentor in terms of sound and placing, adjusting distances from the wall, and I mean we're all fighting sometimes in certain venues to move our gears from the walls, from the windows, from I mean we have to adjust the playing situation, and it should be similar with a microphone, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
But I chosen the F hole.
Yeah.
For this, and that is for one reason. When the first microphone came out, it looked more like a normal microphone.
Yes.
So when you give a normal microphone to a normal sound engineer,
okay,
he will say, "Okay, we can't place the microphone so close. It has to be here, and then all the bass frequencies are gone."
Yeah.
I developed it during the pandemic when there was not so much else to do.
I know. Okay.
It's just to make it simple, foolproof in a way. Just to put it on the bass and secure the wire and.
Yeah. My experience from the Czech Israel signature microphone, which I've as you know, I've been using that for certain situation with a great result, but there was also the situation where if you didn't use your ears to adjust the microphones, you got lost pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But now you have something else coming up. You have something else going on, and I know you have brought the new version of the Axelsson microphone. You brought it here today.
Yeah.
And you have been rethinking in terms of just bringing the mic. You have something else as well, right?
Yes.
It's not only smaller. It has some other features.
Yeah, the thing is to make it small. I took the electronics out of the microphone and put them in a box of its own.
Okay.
And use only the capsule.
Yeah.
Some electronics, but very very simple, and most things happens in the preamp.
So how many sleepless nights? Too many.
Too many.
Yeah. I guess the inventor in you kept you awake, right?
Yeah, and sometimes woke me up.
as well, of
Yes.
course, yes. You brought the prototype for the preamp and stuff, but
Yeah,
explain your thoughts about that box.
so the microphone goes in here.
Yeah.
I'll show you later how to attach it to the bass.
Yeah.
This goes in here. Here I have a balanced XLR output.
Regular balanced XLR. Yeah.
Yeah, it is not. It will not be line level.
No.
It will be mic level. It will be somewhat possible to use in a bass combo or with microphone input,
Yeah.
or to send it to a mixing console.
Yeah. To the house system or
House system.
Yeah.
And here is TS output for the normal guitar cable.
Yeah.
And here is the 12 volt.
Show that for the camera. What we were speaking about. The case is so well done. You have problems getting it out of the case, right?
Yeah, exactly. Too late for the gig.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm late. I didn't get my microphone out of the case, right?
And this now is the microphone.
Compare the size of this microphone. Instead of a box of matches, we have an iPhone. This is the size of the microphone.
Yeah. This one you attach here. And this you put in the F-hole.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
it.
And this is aluminum?
That's aluminum. This is a prototype, so they will be black, not shiny.
Yes.
This has a curved surface, so it fits any surface, and it's clad with soft rubber, not to hurt
The wood?
The wood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will let you introduce us to how to mount it and how to follow the chain of sounds, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can hear you play a little on my Cleveland bass as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. The new Axelsson microphone is available pretty soon, we hope.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
There's some small adjustments.
yeah, some small adjustment. This one will not be aluminum covered. It will be black. Otherwise, the mounting is pretty smart. We can definitely very easy put it on and off in the F hole. And all I can say is congratulations and thanks a lot, Peter, for coming here.
Thank you.
Good luck.